Good evening. For my final video discussion board forum, I'm talking about an article that I found on Liberty's databases about best practices for online education. The article talked about a lot of different things that have to be present for a distance education program to be successful. And one of those things that the article talked about was organization, vision, and planning. They said that we need to organize needs, resources, and capabilities in order to have the class really be an effective class. You need to know what your needs are, what you have for resources, and then what capabilities you've got on staff. And if you don't have the capabilities to run that program, you need to hire people that can. There's also vision, and strong leadership is important. Without a vision of where you're going, you're not going to get there. If you strike out and start driving to the north, for example, you're never going to get to California. Depending on where you start from, say from Florida. If you start driving north from Florida, you're not going to get to California. You have to know where you're going in order to get there. You have to know that, hey, if I'm going to California, I need to drive west and not north. So that's where your vision comes in. And the strong leadership in order to take that vision and make it a reality. And then good planning is vital to a successful program also. Without the proper planning, then the program's not going to be able to be as effective as it could be, and it may not even be able to survive. It may not be viable at all. There are also financial issues to consider. It's expensive to offer distance education. And what you need to do is investigate the technology you would use and how much it will cost to offer those courses. If you aren't getting back a return on your investment, if you don't have the enrollment to counterbalance the money that you're spending on it, then you're not going to be a viable education institution. You're going to be losing money, bleeding money, and it's not going to be a viable plan. So you got to make sure that you have the proper enrollment that matches what you're spending. Another thing that they talked about, and this was really the whole conceptual framework of this article, was that the teacher is a facilitator. They talked about getting away from the typical, lecture model and putting the education into the hands of the students. And as a facilitator, you're more of a guide. You're leading those students to make the discoveries that they need to make and to be the ones that are finding the knowledge themselves, as opposed to just sitting there and soaking up what you're telling them. So that was a major point of this article, is that the teachers really, in distance education courses especially, are to act as facilitators and as guides, and not pre-digest everything for their students, but just lead them along the path for them to be able to find the information and to discover the knowledge themselves. They also talked about student motivation and how if a student is motivated to learn, then it's going to be a lot easier for a teacher to get that student to learn. In order for distance education to work, you have to have students that are motivated. You have to have students that are self-disciplined. Otherwise, they're not going to pass the classes, because they're not going to do what needs to be done to get their work done and to get their work in on time. So they're not going to be good students. And then the last thing they talked about was making sure that you have established policies in intellectual property and fair usage. That's important because a lot of online education is done, of course, online. And there's a lot of research that's done. There's a lot of papers that are written. So we need to make sure that intellectual property is being protected and that fair use policies are in place so that we can use the things that we're able to use, but use them in a way that still protects the intellectual property of that individual. And as for the question, as far as how it's congruent with my personal theory of learning and what I thought would be best practices, yeah, I really do feel like teachers are facilitators. I feel like in a distance education model, there really isn't any other option. I mean, if you just sit there and do a video of a lecture, nobody's going to pay attention to that. They're going to be doodling. They're going to be looking up stuff online. They're going to be doing all kind of stuff. And they're not really going to be paying attention to your lecture. So as a facilitator, then you can lead that student towards discovering the knowledge themselves. So yes, I do definitely feel like it's congruent with my personal theory and my thoughts on best practices. And I really liked this article. The name of it was Best Practices in Distance Education, a Review. And that's where they talked about all kinds of different things. Thank you for watching this video, and I really enjoyed having this class with you guys, and good luck finishing your degree.